Hi everyone, it's Ian from DIY Home and Gardening. I'm on the allotment this morning and got a couple of jobs to do, but I thought I'd actually make a start on a mini series, if you like, on the basics of setting up or running an allotment. Nothing too technical, it's going to be as easy as I can make it, just to try and help everyone out. And the reason being is that I get quite a few questions on YouTube and probably more so on Instagram as to why I do things, how others should do it, and almost, I suppose, where to begin. So thought I'd do, as I say, a mini series to demystify and to simplify so many things as to what is actually required, because let's face it, there's a lot of stuff out there and some of it can be really, well, unachievable and mind-blowing. So let's turn the camera around and have a quick look. So just a quick glimpse as to how my plot is looking, and where it actually is. So it is middle of April. I always do a walk around my channel, but this is the site as things are at the moment, and so it gives you a glimpse as to some of the things that I'll be discussing. Okay, so I'm sat here, kind of like story time. Let's talk allotments. So you've either just taken an allotment on, you've got one, had it for a little while, not quite sure where to go with it, or you're thinking of getting one. So what is an allotment? Well, essentially, as you've seen with my little video, allotment is just a plot of land where you're going to be growing fruit and vegetables and probably some flowers for your own use, or maybe even to sell some. So in itself, it's just a garden located somewhere else, normally within a grouping of other plots with like-minded individuals. Now, my site is based on private land, so that is, someone owns the land and I pay money to that person to have use of the land. A lot of the allotment sites around the UK are council run, exactly the same thing. Council owns the land, you pay a yearly subscription to the council, and that money can include the provision of water. Well, it always includes provision of water. It can also include the subsidy of manures or barks, things like that, but each council is different, so I can't comment on that. So essentially, allotment, plot of land in which to grow, and you're paying money for that piece of land. Simple. Okay, so we've covered that. Now, before doing anything to your plot, you might have inherited the plot, as in someone, has decided they're going to pack it in, they've moved, they've retired, whatever it happens to be, they're not growing anymore. You've managed to get a plot, as in an inherited plot. You'll probably find that when you've inherited that plot, it'll either be in a good condition, as in it's been well looked after and there's some residual plants on there, which you may or may not know what they are. You may have inherited a plot that has been neglected for some time, in which case you're probably going to have to start all over, clear the site. Or it might be a brand new plot, just been created to, well, like with this one here, surplus land, and the owner of the land is looking to raise some additional money. What I would say is, before doing anything, before rushing into anything, just take some time and have a bit of a breather and work through some of the things that I'm going to go through now. Okay, so you got your plot of land, leave it alone for a moment, get yourself a tape measure. Measure top of your plot, bottom of your plot, and both sides. Then you can see what your dimensions are. Put it onto a piece of paper, and that will form the basis of your plan. Now, let me go and get my plan. Bear with me. Okay, so it's worth saying not everyone works to a plan, and that's fine. Personally, I need to work to a plan, and this is what I do. So I've got my measurements of the outline of the plot, and then within that I then mark on the relevant things, whether that's sheds, compost bins, and then setting out of the different beds. And that allows me to work out exactly what I'm growing, where I'm growing it, and how to move those crops around from year to year, which we'll come to at a later date. So first stage, get your measurements down. Then take some time to work out the orientation of the plot. So by that I mean, where does the plot sit or face in accordance to north, south, east and west? Now, sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Why is that important? Well, actually, if you look behind me, those trees, you can see that actually if you've got those along the side where the sun is rising, they're going to cast a lot of shadow. So my suggestion being, new plot, or looking to get a plot, come up in the morning, see which way the sun is coming over, and see if there are any obstacles, if you like, that are going to be casting shadow early in the morning. Likewise, come over in the afternoon, see what's going to be casting shadows come the afternoon. Let me as in those trees there. So my plot is actually positioned quite nicely away from those. By about 4 o'clock, shadows coming across, so the plots that side, when people start moving in on them, are going to have shadow later in the afternoon, and that will dictate what crops will grow successfully and where. And so when we're looking at the shadows, we're not just looking at trees. Have a look to see if there's a neighbouring shed, or indeed if you're moving in a little bit later in the season where people are growing their beans or whatever, or indeed have fruit bushes, fruit trees, cut flowers, fences. They will all have an impact as to where that shadow is casting over your plot. The morning shadow, so the shadow that's generated from the east, is not necessarily as problematic for the spring, summer months, and indeed autumn, as the shadow cast from the west, because the shadow casting in the east, well, the sun will get higher up, so it will provide more daylight to the rest of the area. It's worth noting as well that the sun is stronger in the afternoon, so if you got shading to your westerly side, then that could have an impact as to crops that will grow on that westerly side that may be in the shade, that need a lot of sun to help ripen them. So it's worth pointing out that all of this so far is basic stuff that you can determine without the use of having to purchase any equipment. And that is really important, because I think a big barrier to entry to getting an allotment, or indeed into gardening, is the perception that it is expensive. I think that stems from social media, predominantly seeing what we call influencers, which I hate that term, but seeing influencers who have a lot of gadgetry generally gifted to them, or who are probably gaining sufficient income from their social media status that they can then purchase things that are beyond most people's means. So you don't need to spend any money to determine the length of your plot other than using a tape measure or buying a tape measure. You can always pace it out. You don't need any money to work out orientation of the plot, where the sun rises and where the shade is. And equally for the next bit, which is determining your type of soil, you won't need any tools either, although if you have a fork or a spade to hand, that will be useful. So it's worth working out and jotting down roughly what type of soil you have on your plot, as the type of soil you have will denote really how successful you're going to be on certain crops. So within the UK, generally speaking, the soil type is going to be either a sandy loam, a gravelly type of loam, as a coarse loam, or clay. There's not that many areas that are peaty and boggy, not within England and Scotland certainly, Ireland more so. So you've got your basic types there. How do you work it out? Well, if you use a fork and dig out a section of soil, hold it in your hands, and we used to do it at college, you can see the different types, but if you add a little bit of water to it, make it into a ball. Clay is going to form a ball, nice and sticky, pliable, and it won't fall apart. If it's a sandy loam or a loam, that same ball, you'll be able to form it, won't be so sticky, it will be pliable, but bits will fall off it. The more sandy it is in structure, the more it will fall apart, and the less it will retain its ball-like structure. So that's quite an easy way to gauge what the soil type is. Just needed a little cough, sorry about that. So it's worth also noting that the UK has a relatively narrow pH range, so 4.5 to an 8 pH. What does that mean? So the lower the pH, the more acidic the soil is. The higher the pH, the more alkali it is. pH of 7 is neutral. So things like brassicas will do better in a neutral to alkali soil. Things like blueberries, as the extreme, prefer an acidic soil. So that's quite a generalized thing. The more sandy the soil, the more acidic it is going to be. So a sandy loam will be a lower pH than a clay. A clay will generally have a I don't know, 7 to 8 pH. Sandy soil is going to be from about the 6-ish, yeah, 5.5 to 7 as a pH. So it's not a major thing, but it's worth considering. And again, you can work that out without having to buy anything. If you do want to buy something, then you can get a simple meter, not a battery operated one, but it's just a simple meter. I know that Westland do them, and Tildernet do them if you go into a garden centre, so you'll be able to find those as brands. And it's 2 prongs, push it into the soil. They normally do a pH 1, a moisture 1, or a combi 1, and you just flick it to the relevant thing, and that will give you a crude measurement, or pretty good actually. Or you can also get pH kits, which basically so big, small strips, and then you have to mix them with water and soil. They can get a bit messy. Anyway, we're digressing. So we've covered pH roughly, we've covered soil type roughly. The next thing to do is, I would say, have a look around you. Take some time. If you can see what the neighbouring land is like, or what's growing on your site, or indeed other people's sites. Not necessarily the plants, but weeds. Now, why are we looking at weeds? Well, weeds are a really good indicator of your type of soil. So things like nettles, for argument's sake. Now, nettles want a soil that is high in nitrogen and fairly open in structure. So if you've inherited a plot that has plenty of nettles in, well, actually that soil's going to be nicely worked, going to have good fertilizer content to it as well. Then brambles would be sort of the other extreme. They want nice moist conditions, almost woodland like, heavier soil. So if you've got loads of nettles is sort of your dry, well worked. Brambles, wetter, less well worked. You know, you're going to have a bit more effort involved with a brambly plot than you have with a nettly plot. Both are going to be painful to dig out. Then you've got couch grass. Now, couch grass is long sections of grass, long blades, very much like you'd found in meadows. And that likes a heavier soil, but its roots spread better when the ground has been worked. So, as in, I guess around here, clay soil, but farmland. So it's been well worked previously, has broken up the soil structure to allow those roots to spread through and kind of do its thing. Couch grass also likes neutral to alkali soil, so again that will give you a slight indication. Buttercups, if you've got perennial buttercups out in the out in the fields or next door, then they'll want a wetter soil that is neutral to more acidic. So again, that will help you. So gauge what is around you and you can make some informed decisions based around that. Get some ideas as to perhaps what may work and may not work. It's also worth looking at neighbouring plots as well to see how they've done things. So if at the bottom end, well, actually have a look at the gradient of your plot as well. If it's flat, that's great. If it slopes, then the higher element is going to be better draining than the lower section of your plot. Equally, as I say, have a look at other plots. Where have they got, where have they got their rhubarb? Is their rhubarb growing successfully? If it's big and lush, then you know that that ground is moisture retentive, it's going to be fertile. All right, they might be putting fertilizer on it, but to sustain that growth, it's got to be a fairly nutrient-rich soil. The green woodpeckers and the farmers. If they've got onions growing in the ground, as in not raised beds, if they're growing in the ground and growing successfully, then you know that the ground is going to be free draining. It's going to be a neutral-ish soil. And again, that gives you an indication of what you can grow. So take from others the information that you're going to need. That's very, very important, very easy to do, and so it takes no real effort at all. Just stopped momentarily. The farmer is moving the sheep onto the new patch. So we've covered most of the basics. The other things worth pointing out or worth looking for on your plot or site, and I'll say site as an overall thing, have a look as to where the access for the site is. Do you have to go past other plots? How many other plots have to go past you? That might determine as to the position of where you're going to put your gate, for instance. You know, Is it near a road? That might determine, do you need to put a fence in, stop people walking by and acquiring some of your products? More specifically, if you're in an area that you sort of look around and there's not many sheds around, it might be worth asking that question: why does no one have sheds here? And it could be as simple as the people that have sheds are the ones that have had break-ins previously. So find that out, see whether, well, actually you should get a contract, but see whether you're permitted to have a shed on site, see whether you're permitted to have tunnels and little grow houses, that sort of thing. But certainly worth asking the question: if you leave something in a shed or leave it in your beds, for argument's sake, spades, forks, will it go missing? So that's worth finding out. Also, it's worth putting or having a note as to where the tap is in relation to your plot. Why is that important? Well, I'll tell you for why, and I had it in my last plot. If you have a tap all the way down there, and the first thing that you want to, and you start planting up, say potatoes for argument's sake, and up the top here, by the time you get up here, this is the spot you've got for your pumpkins or tomatoes. Well, potatoes don't need a lot of water. Tomatoes, pumpkins need a lot of water. So the journey you're going to have to make every day to get to that water point is soon going to take its toll on you, and you'll get despondent. So work out where your tap is, and then manage or plan your plot accordingly. So the crops that you're growing, or the flowers you're growing, the ones that need more water more frequently, position those close to where your tap is. So that's watering. And again, the type of soil structure you've got, the prevalence of shade or sun, that's also going to impact how much water you need. So again, be aware of that. This site here, it's a windy site. It has a prevailing wind that cuts right across east to west. It's very open, so it gets full sun. Now the wind can be a problem, in as much as it's a driving wind and it repeatedly lifts the weed fabric up that I've got on the beds. It means that plants get blown consistently like that. For growing anything taller, I need to stake it. However, the wind is also a bonus, in as much that planting sweet corn, where it's pollinated via the wind, then the wind does a good job of pollinating it. You get a good crop rate from sweet corn. Equally, with the consistent wind across the site, it also means that when I do the watering in the morning, or indeed afternoon, that the wind will help dry the moisture off of the leaves, which is good and bad. But the good part is that it's drying the excess moisture from the leaves, so it reduces my fungal problems I have within the plants. The downside is that the wind also dries the leaves, which means that you need to keep on top of the watering more. It's an open site, so it's nice and sunny, so things that like sun will do really well. Things that don't like the sun so much, so some of the brassicas and the beetroots, where they need covering over with a little bit of some sort of shading to reduce the constant barrage of sun on them. But that is something that I've learnt over the last couple of years of being on this site and my previous site. So it's things like that that you can work out. So you can work out the direction of wind and the sun, and then have a read up as to what crops like those conditions, or are happy in those conditions, or tolerant in those conditions, or hate those conditions. So that is my first part of sort of this basic chat done. If you've got any questions on what we've discussed today, then please send them to me. I'll always do my best to answer them for you. If you like what I'm doing, then please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the reminder button so don't miss out on future videos that I'm doing. And I've always said it, and it is true, enjoy what you're doing, have fun, try something different. And if that means starting an allotment, give it a go. Till next time, bye for now.